All right, man, peace. So a couple of weekends ago, I'm sure that many of you brothers watched the Super Bowl between the New England Patriots and the LA Rams. Well, during the halftime show performance, it featured Mr. Adam Levine of Maroon 5, but it also featured the world-famous rapper Big Boy. For those of us who followed hip-hop over the last 25 years, we know that Big Boy, as well as his partner Andre 3000, have been an indelible part of the hip-hop industry, and they're both legendary hip-hop stars. Whether it's Southern Playlistic, or ATLians, or Aquemini, or Speaker Box, Love Below, or Stankonia, everybody knows how talented both Big Boy and Andre 3000 have been in their group Outkast. But like all other top-shelf musicians, they're also Luciferians. And I always tell brothers, not only should you pay attention to the focus of a frame, whatever it may be, but also pay attention to the background. Always pay attention to how they construct the image in front of you, because it's not just what they want you to focus on, but also the surrounding scenery that's going to tell a certain story. So anyway, they're going to talk about it, and I'm going to chime in.
All right, good news or bad news for the NFL, depending on which side of the fence you're on here. They booked a Super Bowl halftime act to accompany Maroon 5. Because it was just Maroon 5, and there was some backlash because people feel like since it's Atlanta, they should have found an Atlanta musician. And now they have, because Big Boy of Outkast will be a special guest.
Now, brothers, I want you guys to pay very close attention to, as I've stated, what they're going to show you pertaining to Big Boy. They caught him just outside the airport. Of course, he was leaving his flight, about to go off to whatever engagement he was going to have to attend. Pay very close attention to the imagery in the background. Also, when we look at the group Outkast, what is that name for their group an allusion to? It's obviously an allusion to the concept within the Luciferian world that their god, the quote-unquote angel of light, was cast out of heaven. The names Big Boy and Andre 3000 are both allusions to Heru. Heru, or Harpocrates, or the boy child, is also known in other cultures as Cupid, or Jupiter the boy, or what have you. He's the god of the entertainment industry, or one of the gods of the entertainment industry. I did a video about Kobe Bryant a while ago, proving that he is without a doubt a Luciferian, an unabashed Luciferian, by the way. I think that it was in part 1 where Stephen A. Smith said that Kobe Bryant told him, "Don't be like Oprah, be like Harpo." And that was an allusion to the Luciferian understanding of the veneration of the boy child. That is what the Baphomet is for many of you brothers who don't understand. It's the amalgamation of the Father God, the Mother Goddess, and their Son all in one. They worship all three components separately. They also worship them together as the Baphomet. And many times you'll see, especially in the hip-hop world, they will venerate the boy God. There was a while in the mid-90s where many of the Luciferian acts that were being brought to prominence, whether it be Nas or Biggie Smalls, they would always have an image of themselves as a baby or a toddler or a young child on the cover of their album. That is also the relevance of the name that Sean P. Diddy Combs gave to his record company, Bad Boy. That's talking about Harpocrates. He was also known as the god of mischief. He was known as the god of secrets or silence. Before they're allowed to raise to any level of prominence, they have to have an understanding of Luciferian principles and ideologies. I'm going to delve deeper into that in other videos, particularly in reference to my videos on Cardi B. That's why it tells us in Ephesians 5:11 to have no fellowship with the unfruitful works of darkness, but rather reprove them. For it is a shame to speak of the things done of them in secret. All of these quote-unquote artists who are really witches, they have a second phase. They have a face that they present to you on their album covers, on television, in their videos, in the movies. And then they have their real face that is presented amongst their quote-unquote brethren behind closed doors when they make their sacrifices and they go through their rituals. In order for an artist to last in the entertainment industry, I don't care whether it's in politics, it's in entertainment, especially the music world, the acting world, over the course of decades, they have to submit to the ritualistic aspects of the veneration of the quote-unquote Baphomet and its various components, whatever you want to call them. Minerva and the owl goddess worship, Bacchus and the androgyny worship, or Attis and the transgender worship, Sabel and the mother goddess worship, the goddess of knowledge or what have you, Kali, the goddess of destruction. They have to have an understanding of these various aspects of the quote-unquote Baphomet in order to be allowed to rise. They're all witches.
Yes, performing with Maroon 5 during the Super Bowl halftime show when the Saints play the Kansas City Chiefs.
That is a shut up, Evan. That is a bona fide 24-karat gold hip-hop legend right there, no doubt about it.
So the question I have is, number one, why is Big Boy doing this? And number two is where's Andre 3000?
Andre 3000, by the way, is also a witch. He was just known as Andre at first. And then as he rose through the levels, remember, he added that name or that moniker of 3000. Why is that? Because that's in reference to the mythological 1,000-year reign of Heru, or the return of the Lion King. Okay? That's what that's in reference to. If you remember, Bernie Mac had a film that came out years ago called, quote-unquote, Mr. 3000. That was about him being a former baseball player seeking out his 3000th hit. But that was really to show that he was a venerator of Heru. In order for you to get major motion pictures in Hollywood, you have to venerate that system. You have to venerate their gods. You have to adhere to their ritual practices. And they encode it in their movie titles and the plots of many of these TV shows and these films. And you only understand it if you know what you're looking at.
I can't answer either question. But listen.
Now, this is what I was getting to right here. They were able to, quote unquote, corner Big Boy of Outkast right outside of the airport. But look right over his shoulder, right to the left of his head, over his right shoulder. You'll see the 3 6s. It's really 4 6s, but the point is to highlight the number 6 there over his head, because they already knew that he was going to be the quote unquote artist or witch who will be performing at the Super Bowl a couple of weekends ago, as well as Travis Scott, who's been assigned to Kylie Jenner. He's a property of Kylie Jenner. The entire Kardashian clan, they're all witches. I've stated this a long time ago. And whenever you see a prominent athlete or entertainer who is with them or assigned to them, it's because, number one, they're Luciferian. Number two, they're also most likely an MK asset. Like Ben Simmons, he's an MK asset. He's also a Luciferian. Remember, Ben Simmons had to sacrifice his cousin on his draft night. I believe his cousin, quote unquote, got hit by a car right at the crossroads or the intersection on the night that Ben Simmons was drafted. But that's definitely another video for another day, because Ben Simmons has a direct relation or connection with the owner of the Philadelphia 76ers, who we oftentimes see palling around with Robert Kraft. What Robert Kraft and the owner of the 76ers have in common is that they're both handlers for Meek Mill. But once again, look at the numbers right over the right shoulder of Big Boy. That was to show you who his affiliations are with. The number 666 is representative of Saturn, or the hidden god, Laut, which is another name for Shiva. Okay? You see that number 666 is in reference to that. Asar, Saturn, Shiva. So they represent, or they worship Christ, the left-hand version, who's also known as Tammuz, Adonis, Krishna, etc. Those are their beliefs. And once again, that is the meaning behind that name, Outcast. It's in reference to, quote unquote, Lucifer, and the notion that he was, quote unquote, cast out of heaven. Big Boy is an allusion to Harpocrates, Andre 3000. That's in reference to the 1,000-year rulership. Remember, he changed that name in 2000. That's the year that Stankonia came out. Remember, Andre Benjamin changed his name from Andre, as his rap name, to Andre 3000 in the year 2000, which is the year that Stankonia came out. Also remember that they had linked Andre up with that master witch, Erykah Badu, who's one of the top witches in the industry. That's why she stars as a witch in this latest film that we see with Taraji P. Henson, called, quote unquote, What Men Want, which is really just a mockery of the black woman, that she has to become a witch to understand men. That's really what the film is saying.
Big Boy's got so much time invested in the culture. If you were going to give somebody a little crap for coming out at the NFL.
But once again, look at that, 666 right over his shoulder.
NFL, what some people are doing, you would never give it to him, because he's been doing this thing for 20 years.
You know what's funny?
What?
Yes, he's been doing this thing for 20 years, and he makes sure that he does all his rituals, and therefore he ascends up the quote-unquote Jacob's ladder of the craft. That's what that's about. He has to go up those 33 rungs.
You know who Nessa is?
Yes.
Yes, Ness Nitty. That is Colin Kaepernick's handler. That's who that is. Also notice the 2 Ankhs, which represent the divine goddess or the divine mother worship. That oval shape over the T is for the vulva of the woman. The T is for her son Tammuz. When they're brought together, they make the Ankh, or regeneration.
This is Colin Kaepernick's girlfriend. She posted on...
That's not his girlfriend, that's his handler.
Posted on social media today the word sellout. And it's unclear if the word sellout was directed at Travis Scott, who's also going to be performing at the halftime show, or Big Boy, because this news about Big Boy during the Super Bowl halftime show was announced over the weekend. So she may be taking a shot at Big Boy, calling him a sellout.
Shows you how buffoonish these super liberal Negroes are. This dude gonna sit on TV and say Nessa don't play. Well, does Colin Kaepernick play? Because she's speaking for him. I thought he was supposed to be a grown man. Once again, you brothers got to wake up to this. And I know a lot of you guys don't agree. You don't get it. But if you're Colin Kaepernick and you're supposed to be this image or this symbol that represents black power and black freedom, black liberty, so on and so forth, you can't speak up. Your woman has to speak for you. Why is that? Because once again, brothers, she is his handler. Okay, so now, brothers, this is going to be a relatively brief epilogue in which I attempt to expound on many of the sentiments that I broached throughout the video pertaining to Mr. Big Boy, one half of the very talented rap group known as Outkast, who reached their preeminence in the mid to late 90s going into the early 2000s. They're nowhere near as popular right now as they were back then, but as we see with all of these entertainment groups that are allowed to reach a certain level of prominence, they all have the same impetus, the same galvanizing force behind them, that being an adherence to Luciferianism. Outkast is no different. As I touched on in the video, both Andre 3000 and Big Boy are Luciferians. They are within the craft. They are quote-unquote witches, as we can see here in this early photo of Outkast. Andre 3000 pretty much showing you how they got on. Ass in the air, damn near facing the camera. God damn. That's a damn shame. And of course, once again, what I'm saying in reference to this photo is alleged. It's alleged. But for those of you brothers who go back to the 90s, you remember that when Outkast first came onto the scene, they were in their late teens. So for you to gain any sort of camera time in your late teens, we know pretty much what happened. I won't call them child stars per se, but they jumped onto the world stage at way too young an age for nothing to have happened. I'll leave it at that. Okay, so now here's the artist Big Boy, once again very surreptitiously trying to throw up the quote-unquote yoni or mudra with his left hand, the quote-unquote 666 sign, and making sure that he obscures his left eye while highlighting his right eye. Now, some of you brothers might say, well, wait a minute, the brother's just wearing his hat on tilt. Give me a break already with this. No, the reason why he's highlighting his right eye is because, once again, the right eye is the eye of Heru, or Harpocrates. The left eye is the eye of Hathor, for the mother goddess. So sometimes many of these prominent celebrities or occultists will alternate the eye that they highlight in their photograph because they're trying to convey to those in the know that they are adherents to the Babylonian Kemetic Mystery School system and that they venerate the mother goddess and her son. In this case, Big Boy is trying to highlight that he personally venerates more than the mother goddess. He venerates her son, Heru or Harpocrates. Now here's another photo that pretty much is putting forth the same sentiment. We have the right eye that is illuminated. The left eye is obscured or placed in the shadow to once again show that Big Boy is a worshiper or a venerator of the sun, that being the S-U-N and the S-O-N, Heru or Harpocrates. That is why the photographer has his right eye highlighted in this photo. And let me say this, many of the more prominent photographers in the entertainment industry are MK handlers. Dave LaChapelle and Terry Richardson, so on and so forth. They're trained on how to handle and help publicize these assets, while also conveying to those in the know, those within the craft, that these are assets and they've been programmed properly with many of the normal triggers that will reinforce their programming, i.e. monarch butterflies, bluebirds, pyramids, rainbows, red shoes, leopard print, zebra print, so on and so forth, things like that, dyeing their hair blonde, etc. Okay, so now this is our guy Big Boy yet again, making sure that this time he throws up the double 666 hand sign. And they'll make this pose oftentimes in many of their photos. They'll very surreptitiously throw up the 666 by pretending to hold the brim of their hat or their baseball cap or the sides of their glasses or sunglasses. So we can see Big Boy doing that yet again. And there's no need to fix his glasses. Why are you fixing your glasses in a photograph for, unless you're trying to convey some type of message? Here we see them paired together. And by the way, let me also say this. I do believe that Andre 3000 and Big Boy were twin programmed, as many of the duos in the entertainment industry are. They're twin programmed, meaning at a relatively seminal point in their uprising within the entertainment industry, they were almost inextricably linked psychologically. That's how you make duos that really pop when it comes to show business. They have to be twinned. I stated this in regards to Oprah Winfrey and her homegirl Gayle King. They were put under quote-unquote twin programming. They were born in the same year, and that's why they're always linked together. That's why they're always connected. Gayle King is also, I believe, a handler for Oprah. I covered this in a 3-part series that I did on Oprah Winfrey, where I went into some of her MK Ultra origins, especially in reference to some of her programmers, that being William Thetford, Carl Rogers, etc. When we look at Outkast right here, we see Big Boy has on the colors of the black mask for Pan, that being the black and white for duality, as well as the red, which represents the sacrificial blood that is necessary to appease the goat god Pan. You'll see that theme or motif consistently when it comes to many of the more prominent artists, i.e. witches in the entertainment industry. The theme of black, white, and red. And we see that with Big Boy right here. And as I've already stated, the name Big Boy, in my view, is clearly an allusion to Heru, or Cupid, or whatever term you want to use for the boy god who was the product of the union of the mother goddess and the father god. When we look at Andre 3000, I see him trying to mimic some type of robot or dummy or mannequin or Tin Man per se. And Tin Man programming is part and parcel of the MK Ultra program. O.J. Simpson was put under Tin Man programming, by the way. Not to digress. Okay, so now we see Andre 3000. He has the gold grill in his mouth. And my man also has the double 666 over both his eyes to show that he has insight, understanding, vision, and wisdom that others don't have. This sign is meant to be an allusion to the owl goddess of wisdom who goes under various names. Minerva, or sometimes it's associated with Molech, even though Molech is a male deity. But for the most part, the owl is normally associated with the mother goddess. As I've already stated, sometimes she's known as Minerva. She's also known as Lilith when you read the scriptures. That is what Andre 3000 is doing here, looking goofy as hell. But he's under the programming. That's very obvious. And that's why he gets so many roles in Hollywood. Brothers, when you see these rappers and they're getting a lot of roles in Hollywood, whether it be Tupac or Ice Cube, and once again, the term Ice Cube is meant to be an allusion to Saturn, but I'll get to him in another video. Common, the rapper Common, or Snoop Dogg, or T.I., or whoever. They're either under the programming, agents, or both. Allegedly. Let me throw that in there. Allegedly. But it's clear as day. As I've stated before, when you have a so-called entertainer named Snoop Dogg, another one named T.I. or Tip, who is it that they're providing tips to? Who is it that they're snooping on? I mean, it's not that difficult to figure out that so many of these more affluent rappers and singers are plants, especially the rappers. But when we look at Andre 3000 right here, he's under the programming, and they're all throwing up the same signs. Even the most ardent naysayer, I don't think will be able to respond to or answer why so many of them throw up the same signs. A lot of naysayers and gainsayers are so desperate, they'll even resort to claiming that the reason why they throw up these signs is to antagonize people. No, sir. No, it doesn't work like that. I know it's very difficult for a lot of brothers to accept because they look at most of these celebrities as gods. And that's what they're set up for. They're set up to distract you through idol worship, as opposed to you understanding what they are. They're a form of entertainment. They're not meant to be worshipped and venerated as idols. Andre 3000 is an extremely talented rapper, but he is a pawn of the industry. That's all he is. Now, brothers, this is a very revelatory photograph right here. If you're paying very close attention, you'll see that it is a photograph of Andre 3000 tearing up. He's crying, and he has his bow tie in his mouth. What is that meant to symbolize? That means he is under the programming. He's privy to a great many secrets. He has to live a certain life for the entertainment industry to make you think that he's someone who loves doing what he's doing, but he's basically just a slave. He cannot rebel. If he does try to rebel, he'll be put to death. This is basically the same type of sentiment as we see in many of the photographs where they have their index finger over their mouth, or their palm over their mouth, or some other type of object over their mouth. What that's meant to convey is that they are the holder of secrets within the craft, within the Babylonian mystery school system. And if they tell any of those secrets and what the industry is actually about and what they're forced to do and how integral and important the strict observation of the Bacchanalian mysteries is to the maintenance of their careers, there's no way that they're going to last. So they cannot tell anyone anything. What they love to do, what they grew up believing they wanted to become in the entertainment industry has become the bane of their existence. So all they can do is tell their story through photographs. Okay, so now I'm sure that many of you brothers are asking yourselves, if this video is supposed to be about Outkast, why are we looking at Mr. Spock from Star Trek? Why are we looking at Leonard Nimoy? The reason why you brothers are looking at Leonard Nimoy is because of the hand sign that he's making, the quote-unquote Vulcan sign, or the sign for the god of fire, aka the serpent god, who's also the same entity that is venerated by Outkast. As I told you brothers during the video, the reason why their group was named Outkast was meant to be as an allusion to the Luciferian understanding of how their quote-unquote God got quote-unquote cast out of heaven, meaning taken out of rulership. That's why they named their group Outkast. It's meant to be a connection or correlation to that level of understanding that they have of the origins of their power, their entity that they bow down to and worship. So now when we get back to Leonard Nimoy, he's always stated that this hand sign here is for the letter Shin, the 22nd letter of the alphabet, and that it was utilized by the Kohanim, or the priests, in his synagogue. Well, in all reality, this hand sign once again comes from the veneration of the god Vulcan, the god of fire, the creator or craftsman god, who was known in ancient Kemet as Ptah, going back to what? The quote-unquote goat god. That is where this hand sign comes from. So let's pay very close attention now. We see here the so-called conscious rapper, Lupe Fiasco, throwing up the double V sign, because it's also known as the V sign, where you separate your first two fingers from your last two fingers, and you also separate your thumb. It's known as the reptilian hand sign, because reptilians are known for only having what? 3 fingers. For example, if you look at lizards or what have you, and we're going to see that in a moment. This also goes back to the understanding amongst the ancients that when you were enlightened or illuminated, you became like the serpent. Like, for example, in India, in certain parts of Southeast Asia, particularly in the antiquated world or the ancient world, they believed in semi-divine or demigod figures known as Nagas, spelled N as in Nancy, A as in apple, G as in George, A as in apple, S as in Sam, who were part serpent, really meaning part illuminated, because the serpent was viewed as being the bridge between the physical world and the spiritual world. But that's a whole other video. The point is that, brothers, when you really dig into the Babylonian Kemetic mystery school system and what it's about, it normally revolves around the worship of a few things, that being the serpent, the sun, the goat, the bull, the mother goddess, and her son. And when you understand that almost all of these images and symbols and signs are meant to be an allusion to those basic things, it becomes pretty simplified. But once again, this hand sign that you see here, of course, Lupe throwing up the diamond and also the double V, he's showing you that he's a Luciferian and that he venerates the sun god and the serpent god, because they're both the same thing. As we can see here, it cannot get any plainer than this. It says at the bottom, the devil. What is he throwing up with his right hand? He's throwing up that same hand sign, right? The same V sign. Ring finger and pinky separated from the forefinger and the middle finger, and the thumb also separated. And as we can see, once again, this is just a stylized image of the quote-unquote composite entity known as the Baphomet. Except here he happens to have wings and doesn't have female breasts. But once again, same thing. Goat God has the horns, has the wings, etc. Now, brothers, this here is a depiction of the logo for the NBA basketball team, the Toronto Raptors. And we know that a raptor is a prehistoric version of what? A reptile. How did they stylistically show the logo? With 3 claw marks for the 3 fingers. That is where that hand sign comes from. It's to show that you're enlightened, you're a reptilian, you've been illuminated. Now this person here, we all know him as Pharrell. He's probably the person who's publicized the so-called shin sign more than any other person other than Leonard Nimoy in the modern time, at least for the masses, to publicize it to the masses. And without a doubt, he is a Luciferian, a very high-level Luciferian as well, and a pansexual. We see that not only is he showing the V sign with his left hand, or the so-called shin or reptilian sign for Vulcan with his left hand, he's also wearing the jacket with the V on it as well, the red V. And that's a theme that I'm going to be addressing in other videos, because there are other high-ranking Luciferians that are making it known what they're about, and that they're a reptilian, quote-unquote, meaning they've been illuminated. Hey, brothers, look at what we have here. Miss Willow Smith, the gender identity confused, sexual identity confused entity herself. The person who was taught Luciferianism by both of her parents, both Will and Jada. And I'll be expounding on this in the video that I do on the Smiths. But if you pay very close attention, you see that Will Smith and Jada Pinkett Smith raised both of their children up through the programming. It's very clear, especially with that gender bending aspect of having the girl named after the father and the boy named after the mother. They did their best to make sure that they broke down all of the sexual inhibitions that both the children had from their youth upward. Am I saying that they were molested by their parents? No, I'm not going to say that outright. But it's pretty clear to me that certain things occurred. But no, I'm not going to make that outright accusation. But let me say this: molestation, satanic ritual abuse is a part of the programming. They want to break down every wall. So the younger the better, the fewer the inhibitions that the asset has or the subject has, the easier and the more thorough the programming, and therefore the more proficient the altars that you can install and the triggers, so on and so forth. But as we see here, Willow Smith showing that she's been raised in the programming, or at least in the craft, is crossing her arms, the X for Osiris, and throwing up the double shin, the double reptile hand sign. Here we see Pharrell Williams again of the Neptune. And by the way, Pharrell Williams was raised on a military base, a military installation, along with his partner, Chad Hugo. So were they raised up in the programming? I have very little doubt about it. We also see him here with his pansexual friend, allegedly pansexual friend, Busta Rhymes. But there have been so many stories that have been spilled about Busta Rhymes and his proclivities. There's really not that much to allege. It's pretty much been put out there. And as we can see, he's also throwing up the quote-unquote shin sign to show his obeisance to Vulcan, or the reptile god, or whatever you want to call that entity, who is the god of the entertainment industry, or one of the names for the quote-unquote god of the entertainment industry. So now, brothers, this was a relatively famous show that aired back in the 80s called V, which was about a race of reptilian alien invaders who were hiding in plain sight because to the outside world they looked like humans, but underneath their exterior they were reptilians. Once again, the name of the show was V, and the V was in red. Why is that? Because as they do always, they mock the masses through many of these Hollywood television shows and movies. They create these metaphorical messages in these TV shows that people do not pick up on, that are meant to convey what the actual belief system is in this pseudo-reality that we live in. I call it a pseudo-reality because it's basically a contrived program. As we can see here, this actress, who also plays Ryan Reynolds' love interest in the Deadpool movie series, she's showing just her left eye for the Mother Goddess. She's been illuminated. And we see the V sign, meaning what? She's a Naga. She's a semi-divine being who's part reptilian. Okay? That's what they're trying to show you when they do this over and over and over again. I'll be addressing this concept when I do the next video on Kobe Bryant being a Luciferian, because he provides so much information and so much data that I could probably make another 3 videos on Kobe being a Luciferian, because he's out and up front with it. And also pay attention to the little blurb under her left eye. She says, "We are of peace always." What's implied is that we're coming in peace as long as you obey. Now, this was from the original V show. This is when the face is ripped off of one of these reptilian aliens. Marvel also has created a metaphorical allusion to the concept of the reptilian through what they call the Skrulls, or the shapeshifters. And for those of you brothers who grew up collecting Marvel comics, you'll understand and remember what I'm talking about. And that the Skrulls were basically the great provocateurs and manipulators, not only on the planet Earth, but also across the various quote-unquote galaxies. They were a utility that was brought into the Marvel universe by Stan Lee, who also is a very high-level Kabbalist. So that once again, that concept of being a reptilian could be a part of the Marvel universe. So now, brothers, hopefully you see why I went to such great pains to provide context for the quote-unquote V hand sign. Because as we can see here, Mr. Andre 3000 is throwing up the same reptilian, I worship the god Vulcan hand sign. Okay? So all of these top-level entertainment groups are Luciferians, all of them. You cannot get to a position of prestige without being so. Now, this will be the last photo that I will be utilizing in this epilogue. Many of you brothers might recognize this person. This is L.A. Reid. He is the owner and the CEO of LaFace Records, which is a record company that Outkast was signed to back in the 90s and early 2000s. As we can see, he's hiding that horn sign that he's doing with his right hand. He's using that to show everyone out there who sees this photo that, number one, he's a Luciferian. He worships the goat god Pan. And also, this is his subject. This is his golem, that being Avril Lavigne. All these top little female singers, they're nothing but big concubines for all the honchos at these record companies. That's all they are. That's why they make sure that they're risen to a certain level. As long as they obey, as long as they're able to provide all the favors that the bigwigs want them to provide. But as we can see, once again, L.A. Reid is a major MK handler and maybe even programmer, but most likely just handler. And if he is a programmer, he's a low-level programmer. But at that level, he does not need to be a programmer. Most of their assets are brought onto these record companies already programmed. They're normally programmed at Disney or Nickelodeon or some military base, at some time in their childhood. At one point, they were brought through certain talent show competitions like Star Search, so on and so forth, brought through Disney, trained, and by the time they get to the record company, they pretty much know the drill. That's why you have these broads like Ariana Grande and all these other chicks that came through the Disney program. So peace.